David, first and foremost, just describe Wayne Rooney, the footballer, to me.
Incredibly technically gifted, great appetite for football. Probably the biggest characteristic was his appetite, his love for the game. But I think there's a determination in there to succeed. But you know, his technical ability was second to none. Even as a young boy, he could handle the ball at any time, anywhere, and he was physically always very good as well. So he had all the makings of a player. He had all the tools that was required, and he's gone on to prove he's had the mentality as well over the years.
Do you remember the first time you were told about him, probably when you joined Everton?
I remember getting told about him when I came in. Somebody says, "Oh, you're lucky, there's a boy in the academy called Wayne Rooney." And actually, I think it was Walter Smith when I took over the job at Everton from Walter. So, you know, I got to know him. Wayne was still at school at the time. And actually, the first time I got to see him was when he played, it was either the final, the semi-final at Goodison against Tottenham. I'm sure it was the final of the FA Youth Cup. And he played. And I remember walking down after it, the boys were out doing a warm-up, and I'd been up in the gantry doing some stuff for Everton TV, and walked across, and I remember tapping him on the shoulder and saying, "You'll be with me next year." And at that time, what I didn't know was that year we would actually put him on the substitutes bench against Southampton. So he was a boy with, it was noticeable how good he was, but he was very shy, very quiet at that time, and didn't have much to say, just sort of nodded his head with you and went along.
What kind of relationship do you need to develop with a young player like that? It must be quite a real extra paternal level to it.
Well, there's a wee bit of love-hate, and there's a wee bit of sort of, you try to be a bit of a father figure, you know, and try to keep them in the right lines, make them do the right things, educate them well. But he was really lucky, Wayne, that, you know, he had good people around him as well. Like Alan Stubbs was a big influence on him at the time, and you know, he had good professionals at Everton who were, you know, at that time looking out for him, knew the pitfalls. But I think for me especially, I was more concerned that, you know, I didn't want this real talent to go off the rails. And you've got to remember, I was a relatively young manager as well, getting into Everton at that time as well. And I was really lucky that I've turned up at a job at Everton, and I've got a talent like Wayne Rooney in the youth team squad coming through. So for sure, I wanted to make sure that he wasn't going to go in the wrong direction. So
was it a real learning process for you at the same time?
Yeah, it was.
That kind of talent.
I mean, I always used my experience of that when I was brought up at Celtic as a player, as a young player. The only example I had was Charlie Nicholas. Charlie Nicholas was sort of Scottish superstar at that time, and was on the verge of moving to all the big clubs, which he did do. And Charlie was the closest I could sort of relate to Wayne and how he was treated and the way he was. And I was a good friends with Charlie and socialised a lot. So I had to try and think how Charlie was at that age. You know, they need freedom, but obviously you need to sort of give them a cuff round ear now and again to make sure that they're kept in line.
The example that most people would have thought before Wayne was the way Sir Alex dealt with Ryan Giggs when he was younger. Did you ever kind of feel any urge to give Sir Alex a ring and just sort of get a bit of advice on it?
Well, Sir Alex was always great for advice if he needed it. But I think on Wayne came on to us quite quickly, and I think like anything else, like one of your own kids, you want to bring them up yourself. You know, you don't need to go to everybody to ask for advice. So I tried to do the best we could. And you know, we tried to keep him away from adverts too early or boot deals too early. But you know, me and Paul had a great relationship over the years. But probably at that time we're probably more in conflict because I was trying to make sure that Wayne really focused. I mean, Paul was as well, but obviously there was other opportunities for Wayne out there. But I wanted always to make sure that his focus was completely on his football.
It's interesting actually. We talked to Wayne, and he mentioned that that at the time he did find it quite frustrating because he felt like he wanted to be able to express himself and didn't feel. But I think in hindsight he understood that it was the right call.
Yeah, I think most players in the end probably get the feeling that the managers have made the right thing. The only thing we were interested in Wayne going on to be a top player, and he certainly proved that. And I hope that the start was right. And you know, Wayne one day might go on to be a manager himself, and he might be fortunate enough to get a really talented 16, 17-year-old in his squad. And he might think, well, there's another way to deal with these boys, or he might actually think, well, hey, what happened to me would be the right way to deal with them. And I hope, looking back now, you know, folk would say, well, probably the way he was brought up, and we were a bit strict with him, we were tough on him, but we didn't want him to lose his focus on, first and foremost, becoming a top football player.
What, at 15, 16 years of age, was it, I guess in physical terms as much as anything else, that just made him stand out from the crowd, the other kids?
He was physically developed. He didn't mind getting tackled. He enjoyed tackling himself. He didn't mind a headed challenge. You know, he was very rarely on the ground when he got kicked. And I remember, you know, it was in the early days, and I remember we had a few punch bags, and you know, the boys used it as fitness. And Wayne was really keen in his boxing. I remember somebody coming to say to me and said, Wayne's just offered to take MD on with the gloves on in the gym. And I was up in the office thinking, Wayne, he's only 17 years old at the time, taking MD on. And you know, we had like Big Duncan and one or two others in there at the time. But he was a boy who could handle himself, and he was a boy who physically was able to deal with whatever came. And that was a big part of it. But you were always a bit worried, was that physical development going to be too early in his career? Because a lot of boys who are big and strong but actually don't go on to be good players. But Wayne's been able to sort of harness it, use it, and obviously with his fantastic sort of technical ability, being able to become you know, the player we all hoped he would be.
2002, October I believe, is Goodison Park. You're hosting Arsenal, and Wayne does something special. What were your memories of that moment?
Well, it was the result that day as well. You know, I think we beat Arsenal in the end, and the big thing was, I remember, you know, Wayne's goal, and I was always more interested in the team. You know, Wayne as an individual was, everybody was talking about Wayne. You know, I was trying to keep him out the papers, and he was scoring goals like that, and he was headlines, and you know, remember the name was the commentary when he scored the goal. But the big thing for me is, I remember going back in the dressing room after the game. It was the Everton supporters I could hear down the streets, and I hadn't really heard it. You know, they were bouncing, you know, the singing, the noise from the dressing room. So Wayne's goal, but actually the memory I got was what it had done to the Everton supporters. It had made them realise that, you know, they had one of their own in the team, and they had a special talent, and you know, leaving the ground, they celebrated that way.
Does that make it all the more difficult to know that it's one of your own, and then what the potential of what might happen in a couple of years' time, you know, the potential of big clubs coming?
Yeah.
So with every kind of step that he took, was there kind of mixed feelings on your part a little bit?
Yeah, there was. I mean, I knew the inevitable. We weren't ready for Wayne, really. You know, we weren't ready as a club. We weren't ready. I think if, you know, when I left the club, I think we'd have been more ready to have Wayne. But I think when I first came in, but you know, I've got to say that I remember when Sven was picking Wayne for the England national team, he'd phoned me up the day of the game up at Sunderland, and he says, "How do you feel that I'm going to start Wayne?" I says, "Fantastic." The first thing I did, I jumped in the car and I went up, and I was a Scotsman, you know, and I'm up there, you know, supporting Wayne played, and I was thrilled. And actually, you know, years on, and when he was, you know, even a year or so later, when he was in the Euros, I was at his first game in Portugal, drove up from the Algarve with my son. We were still talking about it before I came in today, saying drove up to see Wayne play. So Wayne was really important to me, and I've got to say Wayne in many ways helped my career as well, because I was, as I said, very fortunate to get a player like that on my books, and you know, for me, every step of the way, I wanted to sort of see that Wayne was okay and things were going well.
Does that make it quite difficult that when for a time the relationship wasn't quite what it was?
Yeah, but you know, when Wayne was leaving, I remember, you know, I met Paul several times in a hotel in Manchester, or just outside Manchester. Sir Alex came and met me in a hotel, and we talked about Wayne, and I remember saying to Sir Alex, "Well, I'm not selling him. I'm not selling him, Alex." And he said to me, he says, "Well, just as long as if you do, you know where we want him to go." So I knew there was a few clubs in for him and sniffing around, but I think the Manchester United interest was always going to be the one which we would find very difficult to stop him going there.
Wayne talked about the phone call he made to you in 2009, which was essentially he wanted to apologise for
he did.
Could you just explain that call to me?
Yeah, I mean, he wrote his book, and I felt hard done. But I thought, well, wait a minute here. I was only ever trying to do the right thing for Wayne, and I'm not someone who necessarily holds any grudges. But I thought, hey, I was disappointed with him. But anyway, you know, the biggest thing for me was when he picked up the phone. We'd actually won at Everton, and I come home and the phone rang, and obviously Wayne came on the phone. He says, "Hi, Gaffer." He says, "It's Wayne here." I says, hi Wayne. He says, "I just want to come on and apologise for what I'd said, and I've done the wrong thing." And right away I says, "Fine, no problem, Wayne. There's no hard feelings now. Move on. I accept your apology." And at that time I realised the maturity in Wayne. You know, I thought the maturity in Wayne was changing. And you look at him from when he was a young player to his maturity now. You know, it's what parents see in their children growing up at different ages. And you know, in a way, I looked at him from a football manager, seeing a really young boy, to what I saw in the middle at that time when he phoned me, when I saw somebody who was maturing, to obviously when I saw him at the end at Manchester United.
So what had he said back in that book?
I think he just referred to one or two things which had happened, and you know, I can hardly even remember myself, you know, but I know it wasn't great. But the biggest point for me was that, you know, big men stand up, and if they think they've got something wrong, big men stand up and apologise, and I think even bigger men say thanks very much and we move on.
And then little did you know, but when that phone call happened, that in about 3 or 4 years' time you'd be working together again.